Beef Wellington is like an arts and crafts project that you get to eat. Beef Wellington is like a riddle wrapped in a mystery inside an enigma that is then also wrapped in prosciutto, duxelle, sometimes foie gras, buttery pastry, and it's roasted. Beef Wellington is maybe, but probably not, connected to Arthur Wellesley, Duke of Wellington. Okay, why am I trying so hard? Look, Beef Wellington is the ultimate holiday roast. It shows your guests you care a whole heck of a lot about them. It's delicious, it's expensive, it's a little bit complicated, and it is the subject of our video today. Today, we're gonna dig in deep on Cooks Illustrated Associate Editor Steve Dunn's recipe for Beef Wellington. If you've always wanted to make Beef Wellington but have been afraid to do so, this recipe is for you. And if you chase perfection in the same way that you chase beefy, buttery goodness, this recipe is also for you. There are quite a few components to a good Beef Wellington, and I'm really ready to get cooking, so let's head straight to the kitchen. We're gonna work from the inside out, and that means we start with the beef. For Wellington, that nearly always means tenderloin, one of the priciest cow cuts you can get. As a muscle that sits along the spine, wait a minute, I can show this to you. Tenderloin sits along here, and it doesn't get much use. And that translates to a buttery, soft texture. On the flip side, it's not that flavorful. Flavorful meat? Where we're going, we don't need flavorful meat. Sorry, that's not the actual quote, and it's honestly not exactly what I mean either. Obviously, we want flavorful beef, but Wellington layers on so much complexity and flavor that it's not really a deficit here. With a Wellie, we can have the tenderness of tenderloin and loads of flavor, but it ain't gonna be cheap. Not only are we going with the tenderloin, but we're going with the center cut portion of it. This is a 2-pound center cut beef tenderloin, also known as a Chateaubriand. This is important because its even shape with no tapered ends leads to even cooking. Our first step is to salt it all over with kosher salt, wrap it up, and then let it chill in the fridge for at least 12 hours in up to 3 days. Why salt for so long? Because salt is slow, very slow. Salt moves slowly through meat, so the longer we give it, the more evenly seasoned the beef is gonna be. The chloride ions that make up the chloride portion of sodium chloride will also help meat hold onto more moisture as it cooks. Seasoning and juiciness, yes please. Now, just like ogres and onions, a Wellie has layers. Man, it's like really like out of date movie quote day around here, huh? Sorry. The first layer after the beef, a thin skim coat of Dijon mustard for a little bit of flavor and sharpness. Then we get to the prosciutto and duxelle. Prosciutto will clearly add salty umami porkiness, but it's also really functional. It provides a tasty barrier between the moisture in the meat and the crust. It also helps with assembly. Prosciutto's a pretty helpful guy. We'll lay out our prosciutto into a rectangle and then spread our beautiful duxelle all over the top. Now, duxelle is a miracle food. Mushrooms are incredible on their own, but when you finally chop them and then cook them down with shallot and garlic and thyme and Madeira, they become luxurious and so rich. It's key that you cook it until nice and dry because moisture is the enemy of a nice crisp crust. Then we add our beef and roll it up. Beautiful. Finally, it's time for our dough. The classic Wellington wrap is puff pastry, which features hundreds of flaky layers and a nice buttery flavor. Puff pastry is great stuff, but only when it is fully puffed and light as air. The puff pastry on the underside of a Wellington is often compressed by the roast itself, turning it from light and airy into tough and leathery. It's also a little bit fussy to work with. We are going to use a pâte frisée instead. This is going to be much easier to work with. It is incredibly flavorful because it is packed with butter and it's going to turn golden brown and crisp. And this crust will be lovely around the entire cylinder. Oh, and it'll be much easier to slice and serve. And wait, did I mention that you can do a beautiful decorative finish on it like this? Man, so much to love. Now it is time to bake. Now, unfortunately, this is where a lot of good Beef Wellingtons turn into bad Beef Wellingtons. Bad Beef Wellington, get off the counter, get down. You've purchased one of those expensive cuts of beef. You separately prepared all these different components and carefully assembled them into one package, and you're popping it into the oven. And then you end up with overcooked beef. This is a really common problem for Beef Wellington because you're trying to achieve two very different goals during the roasting process. One, you want deeply browned crisp crust, and two, you want medium rare beef from edge to edge. The first requires high heat, and the second requires low heat. So how did Steve solve this problem? He relied on the science of carryover cooking. Carryover cooking refers to the transfer of heat from the outside of, say, a roast to the inside once you've removed it from the cooking environment. You smart cooks account for this all of the time, whether you're pulling a steak from the grill before it hits medium rare or a chicken from the oven before it hits 165. Most of the time, carryover cooking adds up to 5 or 10 degrees, so it's easy to think of it as small change. But here's the thing, Carryover cooking is not one size fits all. It's impacted by a number of variables, one of which is the difference between the temperature of the cooking environment and the food itself. You'll have more carryover cooking if you're using a hotter oven than if you were using a cooler oven. Size also matters. We will tend to see more carryover cooking in a roast than we would in something smaller like a steak. Now let's go through the checklist for our welly. A really hot oven so we can brown and crisp that crust? Check. A thick roast made even thicker with layers of duxelle and pastry? Check. Buckle up, kids, because you're about to witness some next level carryover cooking. We're gonna roast this beauty in a 450 Fahrenheit oven until our probe thermometer inserted in the center hits 85 degrees, basically a warm summer day, and that's gonna take between 40 and 55 minutes. Now comes the fun part. Grab a drink, maybe some snacks, grab a friend if you have one, and sit back and enjoy the carryover show. We've got 95 degrees. Can I get 100? We've got 100. Oh, still going. That's 110. Now we're up to 125. Will it ever end? When will it end? And finally, 130 degrees. A perfect medium rare. All right, raise your hand if you know how long that carryover cooking took. No one? Seriously, no one knows? All right, well, it was 45 minutes. That's how long it took. Do you know what that means? We did half our cooking in the oven and then the other half entirely on the counter. If you don't believe me, we even have a delicious graph to show what happened. I hope everyone will please join me in a slow clap for Steve. What am I doing? What are we clapping for numbers? What are you doing? Stop clapping. This is just numbers. It doesn't mean anything unless the food is good. Let's slice this welly open and see for ourselves. Just look at that gorgeous expanse of perfect medium rare beef. That cushion of savory duxelle, that golden brown, shatteringly crisp pastry. I'm gonna spoon a little of this green peppercorn sauce right onto the plate and cut a bite. Wow. Okay, this is definitely much better than looking at a graph. This is perfection. This is definitely, without a doubt, how to eat beef Wellington. Thank you all so much for watching. This is actually the last episode of season 4, which would be really sad, except for the fact that season 5 starts up right away. So you will see me really, really soon. I would love to know what you're planning on making for the holidays. If you're gonna make the welly, let me know. If you're not gonna make the welly, let me know why not. Big thanks to Steve for his recipe. While you're down there leaving comments, all that kind of stuff, give me some ideas for season 5. If there's stuff you wanna see me do, I would love to know it. Always looking for new ideas. And while you're down there, also hit subscribe, hit like. I hope you have wonderful holidays, and I will see you very soon.